He got it. Congressman Ryan argued forcefully for changing the program, warning it will go bankrupt if changes aren't made, and said the president's health care reform plan makes things worse.
Look what Obamacare does. Obamacare takes $716 billion from Medicare to spend on Obamacare. Even their own chief actuary at Medicare backs this up. He says you can't spend the same dollar twice. You can't claim that this money goes to Medicare and Obamacare. And then they put this new Obamacare board in charge of cutting Medicare each and every year in ways that will lead to denied care for current seniors. This board, by the way, it's 15 people. The president's supposed to appoint them next year, and not one of them even has to have medical training. They haven't put a credible solution on the table. He'll tell you about vouchers. He'll say all these things to try and scare people. Here's what we're saying. Give younger people, when they become Medicare eligible, guaranteed coverage options that you can't be denied, including traditional Medicare. Choose your plan, and then Medicare subsidizes your premiums. Not as much for the wealthy people, more coverage for middle-income people, and total out-of-pocket coverage for the poor and the sick. Choice and competition. We would rather have 50 million future seniors determine how their Medicare is delivered to them instead of 15 bureaucrats deciding what, if, where, when they get it.
You know, I heard that death panel argument from Sarah Palin. It seems every vice presidential debate I hear this kind of stuff about panels. But let's talk about Medicare. What we did is we saved $716 billion and put it back, applied it to Medicare. We cut the cost of Medicare. We stopped overpaying insurance companies, when doctors and hospitals. The AMA supported what we did. AARP endorsed what we did. And it extended the life of Medicare to 2024. They want to wipe this all out. It also gave more benefits. Any senior out there, ask yourself, do you have more benefits today? You do. If you're near the donut hole, you have $800, $600 more to help your prescription drug costs. You get wellness visits without copays. They wipe all of this out, and Medicare becomes insolvent in 2016. Number one. Number two, guaranteed benefit. It's a voucher. When they first proposed, when the congressman had his first voucher program, the CBO said it would cost $6,400 a year, Martha, more for every senior 55 and below when they got there. He knew that, yet he got all the guys in Congress and women in the Republican Party to vote for it. Governor Romney, knowing that, said, I would sign it were I there.
So you can see both candidates throwing around a lot of claims about Medicare. Tom Foreman and our reality check team, they've been checking the facts. Tom, what are you seeing?
Well, Medicare is a government health program mainly for people over the age of 65. 50 million Americans count on this program, and it has got real questions about its financial future as they move forward. Here's the bad news, though. As you heard from both campaigns, each side is saying the other side's future plans are terrible.
Obamacare takes $716 billion from Medicare to spend on Obamacare.
All you seniors out there, have you been denied choices? Have you lost Medicare Advantage?
Because they haven't put a credible solution on the table.
Their ideas are old and their ideas are bad, and they eliminate the guarantee of Medicare.
Essentially, what they're saying is my opponent will destroy Medicare. Can that really be true? Let's look at the facts here and consider what's in front of us. This is the White House plan and the landscape they're facing right now. Over the next 10 years, the cost of Medicare is going to gradually ramp up until it's about $1 trillion a year. The White House, as Joe Biden just said, would like to reduce that by about 10%. The orange section in here, that's the part they want to get rid of. Now, their opponents say, this part you're getting rid of, that's real care. You're hurting people by taking away their benefits. The White House says, no, it is not. These are reductions in fees, payments that we're making to hospitals and to health care programs. In a word, this is waste. We can get rid of it, and we should get rid of it. That is the White House plan. But now let's look at the Republican plan, the Romney-Ryan plan. They have the same landscape to deal with here, the same increase up to $1 trillion, and they also would like to reduce it by about 10%, but they want to rely on the private sector, not the government, and to do that, they're going to use vouchers. They don't really like that word, but that's what it is in its essence. Right now, if you're on Medicare, what happens is the government pays Medicare, Medicare pays the hospital takes care of you. Under this plan, the government would pay you, and you would either pay Medicare or a private insurance company to take care of you. They believe this will create competition, and that competition will go after that waste and drive cost down. So two very different approaches, Wolf, to the same problem, two very different ways of getting at a very complex problem, and there are critics.
There certainly are, Tom. Each side says the other side's plan has some hidden danger. So what specifically are they talking about?
Yeah, what they're talking about, if you look, let's bring back in the candidates here. If you look at the White House plan, the fundamental complaint here is that right now, maybe, you're shoving these costs off on the healthcare providers, but over time, maybe those healthcare providers will let that trickle down to the Medicare recipients. Or worse, maybe they'll just decide they don't want to be in Medicare anymore. They'll pull out of the system, and then where will those people go? The fundamental criticism of the Republican plan is one we've heard before, too. This is about going to the private sector. Well, the private sector has been involved in health care for a long time, and health care costs have gone up anyway. Still, each side is trying to come up with its own solution to a problem that everyone acknowledges. This notion that either side wants to essentially destroy Medicare, there's just no evidence for it. This is false, Wolf, and this is essentially a scare tactic, no matter who's saying it.
One more question, Tom. With so many issues out there, why are the campaigns talking about this one so much?
They're talking about this one so much because if you look at the map, you can see a trend that really matters politically. All over this country, as the baby boomers have grown older, they have increased their voting strength all over the country. Everywhere you see the darker states, that's where the percentage is higher. Look, battleground Florida down here, 17% of the population is now over the age of 65. Seniors are reliable voters, they're engaged voters, and they're really engaged on this issue of Medicare. Whoever wins the Medicare debate will probably win a lot of senior votes in the process.
Absolutely right, Tom. Thanks very much. Let's check in with Anderson Cooper. He's got our panel of analysts and commentators taking a much closer look at what we have seen tonight. Anderson?
That's right. We certainly have been. What else in terms of tonight, I mean, really stood out to you, Paul?
A sense of discipline, actually. Biden is not famous for his discipline. He interrupted a lot and he rolled his eyes. But you know what he did? He accomplished his strategic task. 4 years ago, he had a very different task. Debating Sarah Palin. She was new and exciting and controversial, and he needed to not roil the waters. He needed to not be rude. He needed to not be condescending or interrupting or too aggressive. He did that perfectly 4 years ago. Totally different Joe Biden tonight. It's a totally different race and a totally different mission.
Do you think he was aware of the smiles, the laughs, the...
No, I think he's a very authentic guy. I mean, it's interesting. His only job in life has been as a politician, but he's the least phony politician. His heart's on his sleeve. So, you know, maybe he'll watch the tape, he'll like it or he won't, but I think it was very authentic.
Merrick?
Not being phony doesn't make you attractive. He is authentically, as the woman that said to Aaron Burnett, a buffoon. He was a buffoon. I'm going to say again, of those three people that Aaron talked to, the people who liked him said because he did better than Obama and he did better than what they expected he would do because he's the gaffinator. The woman that I just referenced said he was a buffoon and Ryan was earnest and informative. The women that didn't like either of them, and I'm focusing on women for a reason, said they're all politicians and she didn't like any of it. So yes, he did what he did to pump up his base, but when you're trying to pump up your base at 3 weeks out, that's illustrative of an ongoing problem with Obama's campaign. Romney and Ryan already have their base done. And what Ryan's performance did was validate Romney's decision-making process by picking somebody who was clearly a reformer. And he also passed the threshold test that he looks like he could be a serious, solid guy in the White House.
You know, I see it somewhat differently, and I'm kind of watching the social media. The counterpoint, I do think that Biden got too hot at different times. I think that made some people uncomfortable. But that said, what I'm seeing is people feeling like Ryan was coming across as robotic. Whenever you would see Biden turn to the camera, it felt like he was really coming from his heart. Maybe he was too hot, but he was really there. He was talking. When Ryan would turn to the camera, it seemed very rehearsed, very canned, almost robotic. And for some people, that was a turnoff. And so I think it's going to. But here's what I think is interesting. Everybody, it seems to be saying, even with our folks, this guy understands me about Biden. He understands me. And I think that even if he got a little bit hot, he didn't lose those likability points. I think it's important.
I'd have something important to say, but I'm sorry, I can't. I'm being interrupted by Joe Biden. I think Biden accomplished a lot of what he wanted to accomplish tonight. But at the end, these elections are about the future. A presidential ticket, their job is to lead the country and take us to a better place, especially a country that's in as tough a shape as it is now. Who talked about that tonight? The only guy on that stage who really talked about the future was Paul Ryan. And I think we saw that. Aaron was putting on the numbers at who a better vision for the future was Paul Ryan. His closing statement will play after this debate. That was a vision. We can do better than we're doing now.
But what Joe Biden's job was tonight, and he did it, and he did it well, was he had to right the ship. Because the ship was going somewhere else, and so the eye rolling and all the rest, I'm sure you'll be raising money for your PAC tomorrow. That it will,
the optometrists or something, I don't know.
that it will appeal to the base. But the thing that I will say about Paul Ryan is not only did he pass the threshold, but he exhibited a fluency in foreign policy that I actually was sort of said, oh, okay, he really either studied, knows his stuff, or he spent all those years in Congress and actually learned something about foreign policy.
Didn't it seem overstudied, though? Almost like he had his index cards. I don't know. You didn't feel that way?
I think they both overstudied, if you want to know the truth. And this debate was so full of facts and figures and numbers, it was coming out of your ears, right?
That is one criticism that I might have of Paul Ryan.
No, that is good, but they both studied.
I would have wanted more pictures and less math.
We are awaiting the results, we should point out, of our poll of tonight's debate watchers. Who do they think won? There's a big response on Twitter. We'll find out who our debate watchers thought won. We'll be right back.
We now have the results of our CNN ORC poll of registered voters who actually watched tonight's debate. And look at this. 48% believe that Paul Ryan was the winner. 44% believe Joe Biden was the winner. Sampling error, plus or minus 5 points. Clearly a tie, a draw, basically, between both of these candidates, given the sampling error. Anderson?
Which basically reflects what a lot of you have been saying all evening, John.
It reflects the divide in the electorate. If you ask people right now in national polls, Romney, Ryan, Obama, Biden, guess what? You get a tie. Either Romney's up a point or two, or Obama's up a point or two. So what you have right there is a polarized America. I think passing judgment on how they're going to vote. So it doesn't look like they changed a lot of minds. And I think, again, you hear this from Van, you hear it from Paul, you see it in your emails, and if you look at the Twitterverse, Democrats have energy, there's passion, there's excitement, there's a lot of backslapping among Democrats. We had none of that after the Obama-Romney debate. We had silence, and then you had worry. So I think Joe Biden has to be happy about that. Paul Ryan has to be happy that he proved himself to be a potential president tonight. The one point that is interesting going forward, the other thing Democrats are trying to do is to make him scary. They want to turn him into the boogeyman. The Ryan budget would just decimate the social safety net, not just Medicare, but Pell Grants and everything else. And they haven't been able to do that. In his convention speech and in the debate tonight, he's a likable guy. If you know him, he's a likable guy. You might disagree with him on policies, and I think Mrs. Biden and the vice president proved this tonight. They disagree with him, but he's a likable guy. And he believes, they don't think he's in politics for some nefarious reason. They just disagree with him. And that part, I think, helps Governor Romney. Look, this one has a short shelf life. The two presidential candidates will be back in the arena on Tuesday night. And so that this was essentially a draw tonight. Both sides can come away happy that they did what they wanted to do. I think the shelf life's pretty quick.
Does Joe Biden suddenly become Barack Obama's debate partner?
They need to do a tag team. That's exactly right. It's interesting reading the social media because the partisans on each side are so convinced that their guy won. And they really think you're a jackass if you don't believe this. You know, this was no draw. My guy won. And it's interesting how it came out that way. I do think that Joe Biden did something that Barack Obama desperately needed, and that was to inject energy and life back into his campaign. I think that was an enormous lift for him. But I have a hard time remembering, maybe somebody here can correct me, I can't remember when a challenger to a sitting vice president came out with a draw. You know, so if you look at it from Ryan's point of view, he also did pretty darn well. and helped his side keep their sense of confidence about the momentum.
Although weren't there
moving our
plenty of
way.
people 4 years ago who, I mean, the expectations were so low for Sarah Palin that people said by not...
was a clear winner in that.
Right.
Yeah, when it was over, it was a clear winner in the polls. There are some polls that go a little bit the other way. It's
She
hard to
won
read
by
these
not
polls, but
losing
this-
to a certain degree because expectations
Well, she
were
was
so
still standing when it
low.
was over,
She was
yeah.
still
Right.
she was still standing. I mean, expectations were higher for Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan's been around for quite some time in Washington. He's young, but he's experienced, and so I don't think there were those